Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, eSignatures. Learn how this technology can revolutionize your workflows within your information management systems. And my name is Teresa Resick, and I'm the Director of Online Events, and AIM is your host and producer of today's webcast. And joining me today are Pragni Sanghvi and Francois LeBlanc from OneSpan. And OneSpan is the underwriter of today's webinar, and we thank them very much for their support. And thank you all for taking the time to join us today. Just as we get started, just want to offer a few tips for participating in today's webinar. And by joining the event live, you can resize the windows in front of you. You can do open the group chat, and that's where you can message with each other and also with us here at AIM. Download the resources that we have for you. There's some really cool links from OneSpan in there. And also ask questions of the speakers with the Q&A feature, and do that throughout our time today. And we'll do our best to get to all of those questions later in the webcast. And also at the end, there is a survey, and I truly value your feedback, and just want your opinion on how we did today. And so please take that survey. And this webinar is being recorded, and it will be posted to AIM.org's Resources Webinars page in just a few days. And now to introduce our guest speakers that we have today. Pragni Sanghvi is a product marketing manager with OneSpan. And in this role, she is responsible for launching products, go-to-market strategy, as well as positioning and messaging for all of OneSpan Sign's connectors. She's also closely aligned with customer and market needs and requirements. Pragni brings more than 9 years of product and marketing to this webcast. And then we also have Francois LeBlanc, and he is the Director of Technical Sales for OneSpan Sign North America, and he has been with the company for 20 years. Francois and his team work closely with customers to help document the technical, business, and legal requirements of a solution, identify and prioritize large target applications, and to map out a strategic enterprise e-signature plan. And so I just want to take the next couple of minutes just to set the stage on what we're going to learn about today. And I'm going to do that with a few stats from AIM's research. My intent here is to help you make the business case in your own organization, so please feel free to use these or any of the stats that AIM shares in those efforts. Okay. With the most basic use of signature options as part of our everyday business transactions, we've been seeing the use of electronic signatures trending in a positive direction. And now, with the digital transformation initiatives, it's become more widely acceptable and understood from the C-suite. And we're also encouraged to see gender acceptance from regulation enforcers, since the law was already on the side of electronic signature acceptance. And certainly, this is something that our customer base has come to expect. But still, some sobering numbers. 42% of respondents say contracts, orders, booking forms, and things like that are still signed on paper. Only 16% use digital or electronic signatures for most of their contractual needs. 27% cite the perceived need to have wet ink signatures on paper, and they think that's a requirement. 32% say it's their suppliers who prefer paper over the digital electronic. And 27% cite the lack of senior management support for eliminating paper from their processes. So even with the positive trending we've been seeing in recent years, it's just possible that you can see yourselves in one or two of these circumstances. And that's what we're here to help you with. So now we look at typical constraints. Bottlenecks and constraints are everywhere in an organization. Remove some, and others that have been there all along will begin to surface. And we know that one goal of process improvement is to remove the bottlenecks. So now for the stat. 85% of respondents see failure to digitize and standardize business inputs is a key bottleneck in digital transformation. So that, with the stats that we saw on the previous slide, we know that signatures or the sign-off process is a prime step for your digitalization efforts. Now to relate this to your customer experience. And when we say customers, we do mean your internal and external customers, your suppliers, your partners, your constituents, anyone who falls into that kind of a category. In a recent AIIM survey, we asked, relative to where you want to be by the year 2020, where are you in your overall digital transformation journey to understanding, anticipating, and redefining your internal and external customer expectations? And the answer is that fewer than 1 in 5 organizations are near where they want to be. So in this webinar, we're going to focus on the eSignature portion of how you interact with your customers and suppliers. Getting the required sign-offs needs to be fast, painless, integrated in the systems that you use every day, and be legally admissible. And with electronic signatures, the electronic signatures is one seemingly small step that will make a significant impact on improving your customer experiences. And streamlining this one process in your various workflows will help you face the digital disruptions that are inevitable with digital transformation. So with that brief introduction and a few stats there, I'm now going to turn things over to Pragni and Francois, and I believe Pragni is going to kick things off here, and they're going to share a whole lot more with you and do it a lot more eloquently than I just did. So Pragni, please go ahead and take it from here.
Thanks, Teresa. Thanks for having me, and those were some very insightful stats. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, based on where you're tuning in from. I'm going to jump right in. Paper and legacy business processes are really slowing down business. They're a huge drain on productivity. Paper has been around from hundreds of years, but in today's digital transformation era, content has finally moved to cloud, and it has gotten automated with workflow automations as well. Now, this is what makes business processes move faster. Workflow and content automation technologies transform clunky paper-based processes into those that generate revenue, giving companies faster growth and competitive advantage. Process-laden or paperwork-intensive industries like finance, real estate, legal, government, education as well, these are particularly good fit for digital transformation and workflow automation, and that's where we are going to dive in today. We'll go into the use cases that see the most benefit out of this a little later, but first, let's cover our agenda. High level, we are going to really peel the onion on what digital transformation is. We've been hearing this term lobbed around from a while now. And as we saw from Teresa's stats, a lot of you are on your journey there. But what is it really about? Where is this revolution now? And what are some of its biggest trends that can benefit you and your customers? That's where we'll talk a little bit about a term that I've come to love a lot, magic moments. Next, we'll illustrate a little better for you where eSignatures fit in and what are the top use cases for kicking off workflows revolving around eSignatures. And then finally, we'll give up the stage to Francois, who will show us what we have been talking about in real time. And we'll open up the webcast for questions at that point. All right. Let's get started. I'd like to start by talking about the concept of digital transformation, which, as many of you know, is a buzzword today. Probably a bit overused, and it can mean a lot of different things to different organizations. But what really is digital transformation? It's not necessarily about digital technology, but about the fact that technology which is digital allows people to solve the traditional problems. It can be replacing antiquated processes with online digital transactions, paper reduction, storage reduction, auditability, non-repudiation, self-service, and more. Digital transformation has ROI in a number of areas. Now, while digital transformation is a term that we've come to know in the last several years, organizations really started to transform themselves more than 30 years ago. So back then, organizations were focusing on becoming the paperless office. This involved scanning and digitizing paper documents to free up offices from stacks and stacks of paper. It was also about achieving back office efficiency and giving time back to employees. Unfortunately, most of these processes dropped to paper whenever a signature or approval was required. And from a customer experience point of view, the primary channel was limited to a physical one, which meant physically bringing your documents over to the signer and then the whole rigmarole of scanning, uploading, etc. Now in the 2000s, the digital movement has started. During this process, during this period, everything was about achieving end-to-end digitization. The good news was that critical e-sign laws around the world, such as the eSign Act in the U.S. and the EU directive in Europe, began to pass in order to support enterprise digitization efforts. It also brought it into the government. The Internet also unlocked a new channel, the online channel, which gained in popularity because consumers were now given more choice with respect to how, when, and where they could conduct their transactions. And then in the 2010s and beyond, the surge in mobile use and self-service expectations from consumers has led to the birth of the omni-channel era. And this all stems from customer experience being the number one key driver for digital transformation today. These heightened expectations are coming from your employees and your partners and your customers in every channel and in every part of the world. This brings us to magic moments. Forrester's Alan Bond calls the magic moment as that moment of communication with your customer or team that reminds us of the power of storytelling, building a relationship, and creating lasting impressions. These moments require tools as well as talents, like an integrated CMS and ECS system that creates frictionless experiences. To be able to create and deliver these magic moments, intelligent processes are key. And this is the next step in the digital transformation journey of a company. Your content, forms, papers, processes, they're already automated. Next step is to automate what they do. E-signatures, like Teresa mentioned, is a small step, but makes a huge difference, and it's a short way to do this. Automating these intelligent business processes allow everyday business activities to flow without hiccups. So enabling actions such as document approval, signature collection, tracking, and archiving to be automated into the workflow. This creates the magic moments for your employees as well as your customers. It streamlines work and boosts productivity since it's relatively easy to create these workflows that link several departments. And not only departments, actually, even projects and steps. It links all of them together using a tool set that everyone is already familiar with, like your standard ECM solution like SharePoint Online. You already know how to use it. When you bring all of it together, it just flows. I always like to take the opportunity to show our audience how e-signatures can fit into a larger business process. So while sometimes people associate document signing with the act of simply signing a document, it's important to remember that the signing step is it's a part of a larger process or a session that requires all of the different elements that are on the slide. It requires them all to be built into an e-signature solution like one-span sign. Our experience in doing this over the last 25 years has shown us that the particular elements on this slide is what organizations want in an e-signature solution. So instead of printing to paper from your ECM or your information management system, you'll pass that document to one-span sign. You let us handle the e-signing process, and at the end of it, we'll give you a secure, tamper-sealed e-signed PDF that you can push downstream and archive in your content management solution for long-term storage and retention. Your front and back office remain exactly the same. So keep in mind that our solution is completely flexible. You can pick and choose what you need and design your workflows around your specific need. So if you just go through these steps real fast. Step 1 is access. How is a customer or employee going to access the transaction? Obviously, participants need to get into the e-sign process somehow. That can happen in several ways, including an email invitation or a link in a web portal that would initiate or kick off the process. Next is verification and authentication. Now, this will depend on if the signer is a known or unknown participant in the transaction. But there is no one way to do this across your use cases. So you definitely need and want multiple options for authentication. This involves verifying government IDs using mobile ID verification, login credentials, SMS text code, challenge response questions, integration with ID verification systems like Equifax or multi-factor authentication solutions like DigiPass. Lots of options there. Step 3 is presenting the documents to the signer for review. Step 4 is data capture. So chances are many of your forms or documents have text boxes, check boxes, radio buttons, drop-down lists. That data needs to be inserted into the form before it can be signed. We enable you to capture forms data at the time of signing and then make that data available to downstream systems. Step 5 is, document insertion is the next step, but it really depends on your specific use case. But for an example, say you're sending off a contract for approval and to get the signature back into your ECM system. You can upload a photograph of the sample that the contract is around and upload it to the eSignature workflow, so it becomes a part of that process. Next is signing the actual document, and this is the step that most people associate with eSignature solutions. And there are several options here. Click to sign, handwritten signature, accept only. And with OneSpan Sign, you can select whatever works best for you. And if you wanted to add a second level of authentication, you can require signers to re-authenticate at the point of signing. So we have a few options there as well. And then finally, the last step is document delivery. The documents are delivered to your backend system where you originated the request from, and it is stored in the folder of your choice in your ECM. Your customer receives an email with the e-sign document as an attachment, or with a link to where they can securely download the document. That was a mouthful. All right, so ECM is the core system where documents are stored and then sent for e-signatures and then archived back, right? So this is a natural place in a workflow to target a paperless workflow. So let's explore the ones that we've seen the most so far. The ECM workflows that are mostly sender-driven, like via the e-signature connector for internal and external use cases, those are the ones that we see quite a lot. Internal use cases are like agreements, approvals, requests, etc. And then external ones would be HR contracts, marketing, procurement, all of those. Now, before we jump into the type of documents, on the slide, you will see some of the lines of businesses that we've seen utilize these workflows the most. What we've seen in working with many companies is once they see the value of e-signatures in one area of their business, they then want to extend the value to all the other lines of businesses and departments. All right, so how does this span across the entire enterprise? You may have a specific use case in mind for getting started with e-signatures, but signing is ubiquitous. It's everywhere in your organization. This graph illustrates different use cases for e-signatures in an organization, where you see business to employee or internal signing workflows, business to business, and business to consumer transactions. So the first is business to employee. This is the most common way to introduce signatures into your organization. So for those of you who are just starting out on this journey or who are just starting to explore this, this is where you'll drive adoption the most over here. This is one of the easiest use cases to implement, and you'll get a rapid return on investment. And a typical use case for B2E are internal memos, approvals, onboarding documents, so many more. The next is B2B. And contracting is my absolute favorite use case over here because the benefits can be felt almost instantly. NDAs, SOWs, any templatized documents, they do really well here. So what took weeks can now be accomplished in a matter of hours with this kind of a template. The fast execution of contracts, NDAs with vendors, all of that will allow your organization to deliver essential services faster, and then it saves money and in turn builds trust with your customers. So think magic moments again. And lastly is B2C. This is where a large part of your magic moments can occur and show you the best returns. As you move from B2E to B2C, so left to right on this graph, transaction volumes are inherently going to increase. When you look at your organization, you can use electronic signatures across all of these areas. But the last thing you want to have is a point solution for each use case or area of your business. That's really going to drain you. The key takeaway here is to start thinking about the big picture of e-signatures inside your organization and to make sure that the e-signature solution you choose is going to be able to scale across the organization no matter the use case. So here's a really simple example of how digital has really begun to transform the way organizations are tackling business processes surrounding their content management systems. Traditional and manual paper-based processes were time-consuming because they inherently involved a lot of steps. Documents had to be printed, wet signatures had to be captured, all those documents had to be QA'd, scanned back into the system, really long process. A typical use case scenario would start from a user that needs to get the document signed by a supervisor in one example, or a supervisor then has to send out an official document maybe. Traditionally, all of this was conducted face-to-face, but now as a part of a workflow without leaving SharePoint or whatever ECM system you're using, the user or the sender can initiate the transaction using the ECM data itself. Basically, they would start from the documents stored in a folder and add the internal contact from there. And then the user would prepare and send the transaction. Once the transaction is completed, the e-signed document is stored back into the originating SharePoint Online library, and the user is able to track the progress of the transaction, view the audit trail as needed, whatever they would need. The good news is that technologies like mobile devices, digital identity verification, and eSignatures have really started to enable organizations to simplify both the digital employee as well as the digital customer experience. So as you can see on this slide, a number of the traditional paper-based steps are completely eliminated with the help of digital platforms. So with that, let's go into a quick poll. What I'd love to know is what information management system or enterprise content management system are you currently using or looking to start using? So we have some of the options that we see come up most often here: Microsoft SharePoint, it could be any of the versions or online, M-Files, Box, Laserfish, Highland OnBase or ShareBase, or any other, and you can always enter that in the Q&A. The Q&A tab is along the bottom, so you can just put it over there, I believe. Even if you are just evaluating one of these options or looking into them or considering it in the future, feel free to put that as your choice because that will give us a good idea. Okay. As I expected, Microsoft SharePoint is, as you can see, used the most right now across our audience, and that does not surprise us, which is why the very awesome Francois is going to use Microsoft SharePoint to show you a live demo of everything we've just discussed. No pressure, Francois. Over to you.
Thank you, Pragni. Well, let me go ahead and share my screen. There you go. So as Pragni mentioned, I'm going to give a demo of electronic signatures from within the SharePoint Online environment. And I will do something quite simple. I will have two signers in this scenario, two documents, and it will be a B2E scenario. So something that's typically fairly low volume enough that it probably would not warrant automating the process completely. So it will be fairly manual. But it's important to remember that getting into electronic signatures can start in a very ad hoc manual fashion, but you can integrate and automate the process as you go along. So I'll start from a folder in SharePoint. I have this requisition document that is ready to be signed. So just to clarify, in a complete process, there'll be the document generation or preparation process. And in my case, I just prepared a Word document locally that I uploaded to a folder in SharePoint. So I'm going to start from that point. But in reality, you might prepare your documents in other ways. The point is, I'm going to start from this folder. So I'm going to select this requisition and access the Once Spent Sign menu to create a new electronic signature transaction. So within this same environment, I'm going to add the signers that are needed to sign this document. And again, I will only have two signers, two documents, just to keep it simple. But there's no limit to the number of documents or signers or signatures that you can have in a single transaction. So here in this user interface, I have access to various settings. So I'll go ahead and click the Transaction Settings menu. And here I'll just change the name of my transaction. I'll call it Requisition for Snow Removal. I'll update the name. And just below that, I have a series of documents. I have two right now. An eSign consent, which is the default document in my account. It's always there, but I can remove it. I'll keep it for now and have my requisition per se. And if I scroll down, I have an area for recipients. So I'll add two recipients to this transaction. The first one will be Martine Hellman, and I'll add some details to that user. I'll make it a director. So that will be the title of Martine. Here it is. Now, Martine has been added. I'll add a second signer. That will be Steve Smith. For some reason, I have to have a Steve in every demo that I do. And then in terms of title, that will be our CFO. Here we go. So now I have my two signers. I have my two documents. The last step I want to do is to go ahead and position signatures on those documents. Now, there's lots of other options that I could add. I could add a expiration date for the transaction. I could specify the specifics of the email messages that every signer will receive. I could also go and specify a different authentication method for each signer. In fact, let me go and look at Steve Smith here. And I will specify in the advanced section, in the detail section, the authentication method will be SMS for this user, which means that as they try to enter the transaction, they will be sent a one-time password, and they'll have to enter that code to enter the transaction. So now let me look at where my signatures are. That's the last step in the preparation process. So here's my requisition. It's a requisition for snow removal. Date required is right now. And as far as justification, I've put a picture that was taken in my neighborhood this morning. So I think that's justification enough for snow removal. And I have my signers and some fields at the bottom of that form. So I have the signature area over on the left. I have a signer name, date, and title, which would be filled in automatically by the system at the time of signing. Now, on the left, I have access to many other types of fields that I could add to this form, text fields, checkboxes, and so on. But for now, I will keep this form fairly simple as it is now. Once I'm ready, I'm just going to click Send to Sign at the top right, and that will activate the transaction. So preparing a transaction can be, as you saw, fairly simple. And we want to keep the process even simpler for the signer. So let me show you now what each signer will see. So I will go ahead and go to the mailbox of Martine Hellman. Martine has received an email just now. Now that email can be completely branded to your account. In my case, it's not branded, but in your actual account, it would have your brand in it. The content even can be completely customized to your liking. So there's nothing fixed in the user interface or in the emails themselves. Even the from line can actually come from your domain. So it doesn't have to come from the eSignLive.com domain. But in that email, there will be a link or a button that drives the user to the signature process. And in this case, I made the link go directly to the process itself. There's no additional authentication. We'll see for the second signer an additional step on that front. So here's my first document. It's an e-sign consent, and that document doesn't have a physical area for it to be signed on the form. It's one of those forms that needs to be accepted, but not signed physically. So in that case, our system puts an opt-out and an accept button at the bottom. And if I click opt-out, I'm given the option of saying why, specifying to the initiator, why am I not signing? Well, we're Wednesday, and I never sign anything on Wednesdays, for instance. In this case, I'll go ahead and accept, and that will drive me automatically to the next document, which in my case is the last document to sign, and that's the requisition itself. So I'll go ahead and click to sign. So all I need to do as a signer to indicate my intent to be bound by whatever is on this document is click the signature area. And to confirm, I'll go ahead and click OK. So the system at this point knows that this is my last signature on this document, and it wants me to confirm my intent to sign. So it's really my last chance to opt out of the process. So I'll go ahead and accept. And that will signal our system to apply a digital signature to the document. Now we have this thank you dialog that can be completely customized to your liking. You can add whatever messaging you want in this dialog. The user can be instructed to click close or to move to another area of your website. In this case, I'll just stop here, and I will flip to the mailbox of the second signer, which is Steve. Steve has also received an email at this point. Again, a very simple email template that you can adapt to your liking. And at this point, the system is asking me to enter the code I received via SMS. So let me go back to my phone, get the code. Now the code I received is 665827. I'll enter one more digit because I don't have enough caffeine in my system. And that's a way for me to show you a negative test. Then you remove the extra digit and then access the transaction. So at this point, I was given access to the transaction, and the user interface I will see as the second signer is essentially the same as the first signer. I'll go ahead and accept the first document, but I'll take this opportunity to mention that as an initiator of the transaction, I could have decided to hide certain documents from some signers. They don't have to see the same set of documents necessarily. If I scroll down a bit, I see that Martine Hellman was there before me. She saw the document and signed it, and I'm going to go ahead and countersign the document here. Again, I'm asked to confirm, and that will signal the system to apply a second digital signature to the document. And that concludes the signature process for my two signers. It's really that simple. We want the end user, the signer, to take as few decisions as possible. That's why we put the onus on the initiator to decide how they will be authenticated and how they will sign. Now, let me download this document. Let me show you what the signed document looks like. So there are really two aspects of the audit trail that I want to show. The document itself, which is just a PDF, perfectly normal PDF document that I'm opening in my default viewer, which happens to be Adobe Reader. And here, it's actually Adobe Reader that tells me that these signatures are valid. And if I click a signature from within Reader, it is Reader again that will confirm the validity of the signature, and it will give me access to its properties. For instance, I have the exact signing time of this signature. I have the email address of the signer and the IP address of the signer. So I know who signed, where they were when they signed, and at what point in time they signed. And if I were to close this and access the same information from the other signature, I would have a different email address and a different timestamp. So you can tell right from the document, without accessing any other system, exactly who signed where and when. And that's true whether or not you have a relationship with OneSpan Sign, because this document is completely self-contained. We put all this information in the document itself. It doesn't need to connect to any outside server. It doesn't even need to connect to the internet, for that matter, to get access to this information. So it's completely self-contained. Now, the second and really last thing that I wanted to show in this part of the demo, if I go back to SharePoint and now I review my inbox of all the transactions that are currently ongoing and refresh the screen, I'll see that this transaction that we just went through is now completed. And I have access to another piece of audit trail, which we call the evidence summary. Now, the evidence summary, let me access the transaction from here. So if I download the evidence summary, I'll get a document that gives me a list of all the events that occurred in that transaction. So I have a list of metadata about the transaction, how many pages, how many documents, and so on. But if I scroll a bit down here, I'll get this list of all the events that occurred. So I see Martine Hellman came first. She viewed here a specific document from a specific IP address at a given time. If I keep scrolling, I'll get to the point where Steve Smith came in. Steve was sent an SMS code, but failed SMS authentication, and then just after that succeeded and started signing. So I have all this information in a separate document that is typically only kept by the initiator of the transaction, although you can make it available to other parties as well. But typically it's for you to have an additional layer of evidence should there be any doubt, any dispute concerning the electronic signature process. So together, these two elements give you a lot of evidence in the case of a dispute. But there's one more layer, one last layer that I would like to mention, and that's the what we call the eWitness tool. So the eWitness tool allows us to go back in time and review a past transaction. So let me skip a few slides just in the interest of time here. Here's what the eWitness tool will allow me to see. If I want to go back in time and look at a past transaction, I would see the pages that were presented to every user in that past transaction. So here's an e-signed consent, just like we just saw, and that page was captured at a specific point in time. I have a timestamp here at the bottom, and I can actually scroll through the entire page. It's not just a screenshot, it's the actual HTML page that was presented to the end user. So you can really do like an instant replay in football or hockey and see exactly what the user saw, what the user did in real time. So with these three elements, you are protected against any type of dispute. People often ask us, well, has this been tested in court? Well, frankly, I've been to the staircase to the court, never actually went to court, because with such abundance of evidence, the other party can't really say that they did not sign or sign something else. Sometimes we'll have customers saying, well, I did sign something, but clause 3.1.1 was never shown to me. Well, we have the document, and we have the eWitness tool that allows us to see exactly what document was signed. So that's a lot more evidence that you would ever get in the paper world. So that's what I wanted to cover. Again, just to recap, we saw two documents, two signers. We saw documents being delivered or information being delivered by email. We saw two types of authentication, just email and email plus SMS. And we saw a click-to-sign signature method, but we have other methods as well. As Pragni was showing in her slide, there's lots of options at every step of the process, but this afternoon we wanted to give you a quick overview of some of those options. So with that, I will stop sharing and go back to Teresa.
Perfect. Actually, I'll take it from here, Francois. Thank you so much. That was really great. All right. So now, before we conclude and move on to Q&A, let's talk about some top requirements that you should look out for. In working with many organizations that require ECM and information management systems with eSignatures, we recognize that there are 4 critical requirements for a successful eSignature implementation. First and foremost, it has to be easy for everyone to use, signers, senders, and developers. Let's not forget them. That's because signing is such a universal concept in business that no matter your age or position in the company, and whether you're on the front line or a C-level executive or a customer, it's got to be really easy to use. Second, the solution has to have flexibility to automate any use case across your different lines of businesses, channels, and geographies. Third, the solution has to capture as much information as possible as a part of the audit trail that Francois just showed us, so that you can reliably and easily provide what happened during the signing experience and in the event you're faced with a compliance audit or a legal dispute. And lastly, it has to enable you to easily scale eSignatures across your enterprise. So whether that's locally or abroad or in your particular line of business or another line of business in the organization, ultimately what this does is help you reduce your time to market, and it lowers your total cost of ownership. Now, let's do a quick summary of the most important things that we want you to take away from this webcast. eSignatures are a critical aspect of any digitization initiative. So it's a proven solution. We've been doing it for 25 years. You can start small, but think big. It's a solution that can conform to your requirements, not the other way around. And to recap, you want to select a solution that is tried and tested and used by some of the world's most trusted and security-conscious organizations. eSign Live has been in the e-signature world for over 25 years now, and we have a proven track record in government and financial services, as well as small and mid-sized organizations. Next, select a flexible and scalable enterprise-grade platform that will grow with your organization's needs. Don't get stuck with a point solution that will end up costing your organization when it comes time to extend e-signatures across multiple workflows, lines of businesses, departments, and teams. No matter which plan you choose, you want the power to fully white label the e-sign process and to provide you a trusted experience and ensure the highest completion rates possible while helping you easily demonstrate compliance and support your legal case with the strongest audit trails in the market. Security is very important in today's day and age. Equally important, your e-signature solution should be backed by a team of people with deep domain expertise in e-signatures in your industry and enterprise or government deployment. Above and beyond technology, you want a team that will help you succeed. This includes solution consultants, technical support, product experts, and a growing online community which can share best practices with you to ensure your e-signature project is a great success. So you want your provider to be fanatical about customer service, and they will do whatever it takes to make sure you hit the highest adoption rates possible. Here are some of the best ways to get started. OneSpan Sign was designed to be easy for all stakeholders to use, signers, senders, and developers. Like I mentioned earlier, there are a number of ways in which your organization can consume e-signatures, and this largely depends on your use case and whether you need e-signatures embedded inside of an application like your ECM system, SharePoint Online, or whatever it is, or not. So this slide highlights the 3 flavors of OneSpan Sign to satisfy the various use cases in the market. The first is our professional plan. It's a standalone web, and it also has mobile apps with it that satisfy the most common internal signing workflows and e-contracting use cases. Next is our enterprise plan, which is a solution that gives you the ability to add e-signing capabilities into your own applications, whether it's through your website, your mobile app, or you can even use our standard REST API or our fully supported SDKs. And lastly, we also offer a number of pre-built connectors for third-party applications like these ECM systems that we've been talking about, and information management systems like SharePoint Box, Laserfish, Salesforce, Dynamics CRM, Office 365, whatever you need it to be. And with these connectors, we've done all the integration work for you. There's no coding or IT resources that are needed to get started with e-signatures inside these business applications that you know and use every day. So you just hit the ground running. We also have flexible pricing plans to meet your needs. And the beauty of this is no matter which way you choose to consume OneSpan Sign, whether you are looking for an out-of-the-box solution or to fully customize the solution for your needs, you gain access to over 25 years of e-signature enterprise and innovation through our people and directly built into your platform. With that, I can hand the mic back to Teresa for Q&A.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We've been listening to Pragni Sanghvi and Francois LeBlanc, and there is their contact information on there. I also encourage you to go to the resources because there's a really great article that Pragni just recently wrote, and there's a link to it in there, and also a link to some other really great points on their website. We have a lot of questions in here, and I know we're not going to get to all of them today, so we will be following up directly with you after the webcast, but we're going to do our best to get to everything we hear, as many questions as we can. There's just a lot here, so bear with us. Just quickly here, and Francois, I think let me just go ahead and start this over with you. Someone's asking about we referenced the legality of all of this, and what are the specific laws or acts that we've referenced that makes electronic signatures legally admissible?
Yes, absolutely. And in the interest of time, I'll keep it short. But we're very lucky in this industry because the legal framework is very, very clear. It's been around for a number of years. And we're looking at two main laws in the U.S., eSign and AUDIT. That law has been enacted over 15 years ago. And they allow us to basically apply an electronic signature to any document where a signature would be required. And basically what they say is anywhere a signature is required, you cannot deny the validity of the signature only because it was done electronically. So this has been in place for a long time. It's been very successful in the sense that very few disputes have reached the courtroom. And in the few cases where it did, the electronic signature side of the equation won the case. So again, very, very lucky to have a legal framework that is an enabler for this industry.
Thank you. Next question here, someone's asking if the source point or the person for the document creation and the document's insertion, can different people be at different stages of the creation process?
Oh yes, absolutely. You can definitely have different people collaborating. You can have different people working on different transactions at different and have them at different points in the process, so that is completely supported. So that there's no limit to how many transactions there are, how many users you want to allow to create transactions, and the steps. They don't have to be in lockstep with each other, obviously. So I'm not sure that actually answers the question, so feel free to follow up with clarifying questions, but just wanted to clarify that, yes, you can have as many transactions and users at different stages in the process as you want.
Okay. Any document size limitations?
We do.
Go ahead, Francois.
Okay, so there's a limit of 16 megabytes per document, but there's no limit on the number of documents. So if you have a really, really huge document, we suggest that you break it down into manageable size, because beyond 16 meg, it becomes quite slow to upload and download the document. So it seems to be a good limit for size. And
a couple of questions here from some different people specific to the SharePoint integration, because that was in the demo that we had here. And they're asking about are there differences, or how will this affect if their SharePoint is online or on-prem?
So the demo we did was SharePoint Online, but you can also use an older version of SharePoint on-prem and implement it there as well.
And then also with the SharePoint screens that were part of the demo, questions a bit about the integration with this. Was it with it directly into the SharePoint, or was it with the connection in there? Was it how it's developed, or is there a separate module from OneSpan? How does that integrate in, whether it's SharePoint or any of the other applications that you have the connectors for?
So maybe I can take this one. It's actually a separate module that you download, and it works slightly differently whether you're on-prem or online. So in the on-prem case, you download physically a separate module that you install locally. In the online case, you simply install the app into SharePoint. So it's a lot simpler in that case. But in all of the systems we support, if it's an online system, it's really a matter of just installing the application, just really nothing to download or set up per se.
Right, and just to add to that, what Francois did show was just our connector. It wasn't any extra developing or anything in there.
Okay. And another question here, someone's asking about the implementation time. How much effort does it take to get up and running?
That's a good question, because...
Oh.
No, go ahead, Frankie.
No, that's all right. Go ahead, Francois. You started already.
I was just going to say that a lot of people come to us and they're a bit scared of the effort it might take to go to electronic signatures, and it's actually quite quick to get started. As what we showed today, required no development at all. So it's simply a matter of opening an account, which is a one-day affair. You might want to reserve a week or two of time just to brand the system and decide what your email templates will look like. But it's really not a development effort. It's more of a branding reflection that you have to make. And that is probably what will take the most time. Then you have to learn how to use the system, and that's really just a few hours of training and practice.
We're getting close to the end of our webinar time here, and please continue to post your questions in Q&A because the folks from OneSpan will get back with you afterwards. But I do just need to mention a couple of other things here. Just join AIIM and all of us in San Diego for our annual conference that's starting on March 25th, and that's just 5 weeks away from now. We have a fabulous lineup of keynotes, an overflowing agenda with dozens of amazing industry speakers, roundtable sessions, brain dates, and those are peer-to-peer discussions, and a whole lot more. And so there's a quote here from George Parapadakis, and he is saying that with these conferences and a membership, that it's just a great networking opportunity. And also Jethro Sagers says that come to the AIM conference and be overtaken by everything that's going on. Everybody is here based on their true value, and that's really refreshing. And these are quotes from people who've attended AIM conferences in the past. And so for more information about the conference, to get that information and to register for the event, just go to aimconference.com. And I really look forward to seeing you there. And since we are at the end of our webcast time, just to remind you, we have recorded this webinar, and we will be emailing everyone that link to come back and listen to the replay. So I invite you to listen to it again. Invite your colleagues to listen to it. There was so much really good information in here today. Do download the resources. Please take the feedback survey. I greatly welcome everybody's feedback. And very much want to thank our underwriter, OneSpan. Without the support from our solution providers, AIM would not be able to bring you these free educational programs like our webinars. So thank you very much for your sponsorship. And that is the end of our time today. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you, Pragni and Francois from OneSpan. It's been a delight. I'm very pleased to have you here today and sharing your knowledge. And thank you, everyone, for your time today. For AIM, this is Teresa Resick, and we'll see you with our next webinar.
Thank you, everyone.